Today on the Greater Things podcast, I'm speaking with Aimee McCluskey. Just as a possible trigger warning for this episode, we are covering topics of sex trafficking. Aimee has been involved with the work in Nepal, and she is sharing some of her insights and some of the stories around the work that she has been a part of. Well, today on the Greater Things podcast, I'm sitting with a brand new guest. She is a friend of Trish and I, and she's been in and around Greater Things now for over 12 months. Her name is Aimee McCluskey. How you doing, Aimee?
Hi, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Well, ever since I met you, part of me has wanted to sit with you in an environment like this to hear what's on your heart. Each course you've been involved in with us and the way that you've engaged with Greater Things, there's such a high level of authenticity about you and a willingness to be present and a willingness to be honest. And all of those things have been massive ticks in my book. I just love when I see that come from people. And then when I heard of some of the work that you're doing in Nepal and a part of, I thought, wow, I really want to record a podcast with you. Hope that's all okay to say that, Aimee?
Yeah.
So, Aimee, when did you find out about Greater Things, and how did you engage with that?
I was following Lana Vosma's stuff online, had been for a few years. So she's done a lot of interviews and podcasts with you over time. So I think you were at Haberfield when I first connected, and then saw the courses that you guys were doing through Greater Things, and they were interesting, and that wasn't something that I had access to anywhere other than online. So I jumped on there, and the rest has been history.
Well, I'm glad for it. So, Aimee, the question I ask most people who come on to my podcast is, who are you? And as I've given you a heads up with this sort of conversation, so often in our world when we say, who are we define ourselves by the things we do. But knowing you, I think there's a way deeper conversation of who is Aimee. How do you feel about answering that question?
I'll try. I'm a single mum, 4 girls. I've got a 13-year-old, a 15-year-old, a 17-year-old, and a nearly 19-year-old daughter. We homeschool as well. We live up here on the mid-north coast, New South Wales. Do some content creation for a living, but I also volunteer these days with an organisation called Every Daughter Matters, and they work in the field of anti-trafficking in Nepal, so humanitarian stuff. Yeah.
There's so much even in just that one conversation, like the homeschooling. You probably need a medal for that one.
Accidental, didn't plan it, just kind of happened.
I think anyone who teaches deserves double pay. But well done. So recently you went on a trip to Nepal with your oldest daughter. And that was in January?
February. We were in most of February. Yeah.
What happened?
It was amazing. So I'd been working with EDM for 3 years. The organisation's only 4 years old, so it's pretty grassroots level at the moment. The team go to Nepal every 6 months to check on the work on the ground. They do the project management from Australia, but it's all indigenously staffed and managed over in Nepal. So we were able to jump on with the team and go over. We did 2 weeks travelling from Kathmandu out west along the border, visiting the work. So there's border surveillance interception booths there that catch the girls that are being trafficked across the border into India. About 20,000 girls go missing every year.
Wow.
And the way we work is that we believe that interception is better than rescue. So that's catching the girls on the border before they're trafficked across. So much easier to prevent trauma than trying to heal from it. A lot of these girls have got trauma anyway, but to catch them at that space, you're sort of minimising the damage. So we got to travel along with the team and visit the works. I've been writing case notes and stuff for these guys for a few years now, so I sort of knew you kind of know what to expect. It wasn't culture shock or anything like that, but to actually be there and to meet the girls and to spend time with these young women who I know their stories, but to hear them tell their stories and to be in the presence of seeing the impact firsthand was quite profound. It was quite profound. And yeah, it was an incredible trip. It really was.
When you say quite profound, deeply impacted in the space of the heart, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. To see people who have nothing, literally nothing. Some of the girls that I met, we spent some time in a safe house. And there's a young girl who's the same age as my daughter. So my daughter's 18. And she shared her story with us through an interpreter. Now, I know her story because I actually wrote her case notes months ago when she was intercepted. But to hear her tell it and the emotion that she spoke with, so to know the depths of trauma that she'd come from to then being trafficked, it was actually her uncle who had finished with her and had sought a buyer across the border, and he was taking her to traffic her across and sell her when our teams picked her up. She was brought into the safe home and she's doing 6 months in rehabilitation, holistic healing with our teams there. So to sit with her and hear her story of her heartbreak, which was quite tangible, but the resilience and the hope that can exist even in the most broken spaces with people who have experienced the worst brutality, but to see hope come back and to hear their dreams for life moving forward. That was amazing, because I think when you work in spaces like this, after a while it can just become facts and figures, it become numbers. A lot of the stories are very similar, heartbreakingly similar, but they're similar. So to be there on the ground and sit with the girls, it was just such a confirmation of the value of the work that's being done, but also the resilience of the human spirit. When a girl is grown up in quite disadvantaged spaces, so extreme poverty, extreme abuse, then to be trafficked into prostitution across the border, to be intercepted and rescued at that place, which is literally, the last moments of freedom. So the girls that go across the border, only 2% are ever rescued.
Wow.
The 20,000 that go, only 2% ever come back, and they're quite traumatized when they do. So to be able to intercept them at that last moment before they're lost, bring them back, and then in the safe houses, our teams work with them to speak value to someone who's the concept of being of value is completely non-existent to them. They have no self-worth. They have no identity. I realized in these conversations what a privilege it is to be able to dream, to have the capacity to think, when I grow up, I want to be, or even I want to holiday, or this is what I'm going to do on the weekend. These people don't have capacity to dream beyond the next meal. I hope we get that. So to see identity take root in young women like this who have been so destroyed, and to see hope rise in women like this who have been so brutalized, to see them claim their story, be able to speak and stand in authority of that as someone who has overcome such darkness, and then be able to say, I'm going to grow up and I'm going to finish my education, I'm going to be a lawyer, and I'm going to work in humanitarian spaces. Wow. It really drove home to us the fact that you get one life, you only get one. And what are we going to do with it? But that we're all capable of doing something that is profoundly impacting for someone else, even if it's just one. Yeah, it was an amazing trip.
Yeah. You can hear it in the way that you're speaking about it too. Like it's life-changing. When I was in Lebanon, so many of the Syrian refugees, if you asked them what their story was, they'd be so willing to share it. Like, people would be chomping at the bit to share their story, and each time you heard it, you wanted to weep through what these people had experienced and endured. Did you find that similar with the girls, that they want to share their stories?
Yeah, we did. So we visited a couple of the safe houses over there. The girls who are intercepted, who can't go home because home's not safe, go into a residential program, and it's holistic healing. So it works on physical, social. Also gives them vocational skill as well, so to break that poverty cycle. So when we were visiting the home, they had 15 to 20 girls in each house at the time, and the girls were all at different stages of being a resident. Some have only been there a couple of weeks. Some are on there at the tail end of 6 months. Conversations you have with a girl who is at the tail end, 6 months in, where she's overcome her shame, where she's owned her value and her worth, where she knows who she is, where she's got hope for the future, is so profoundly different from the conversations you have with the girls who are new to the house, who struggle to make eye contact with you, who their physical posture is enclosed. They're in self-protect. They don't trust. They don't want to share. It's very different. I think shame is such a dividing force over a person and it's such a barrier to healing. So the first step is always chipping through the shame. And once you get under that and get through that, then most people want to tell their story. And I think when people are heard, that's when they really start to heal. So I did see the progression of that with the girls there.
Wow. When people are heard, they really start to heal. What a cracking phrase, Aimee. I love it. So you and your daughter go to Nepal in February.
Yep.
How different is the Aimee in March from January?
A lot's happened between January and March.
Yeah.
So, yeah, life looks very different. Life looks very different. We were really privileged while we were over there to visit a couple of Nepali churches as well and sit in that space. I've been a part of ministry teams over here in our churches, and the contrast, if I could explain Nepal in any language that explains it probably the best, is to say that it's a kaleidoscope. It's a contrast of colour, of culture, of passion. So emotion, they're the smiliest, happiest people, so welcoming, so loving, so all-embracing. I wasn't prepared for that. But to sit in their churches and see that people who have nothing, again, we went to churches in some of the poorest districts, and the only word I know in Nepali is thank you, which is dhanyabad. And to walk into church services and in their praise and their worship and their prayer, all I'm hearing is thank you. So that hits differently when you're sitting in the context of looking out the window and seeing the rubbish on the streets and the broken down houses and the depth of poverty. To hear thankfulness and thanksgiving, awe and wonder is amazing. And for me, both with seeing the impact in the anti-trafficking space, but also being in the Christian community over there and a part of the churches, it was such a wake-up call. It felt like my heart and my spirit were coming home to something that I knew was there, but it wasn't something I had tangibly experienced to that depth here in the West, I guess. I think when you experience something that's so profoundly real, it kind of ruins you for anything else. So the coming back is the culture shock. Actually, one of the team ladies that we travelled with, we were talking about culture shock and adjusting, both when we got into Kathmandu and into Nepal and then coming home. And she said to me, Ames, coming in, you won't have any trouble. She said, you'll be fine. She said, but going home, she said, that's where culture shock hits, because things that you would have never noticed before will irritate you.
Yeah.
And I get it. But particularly around the stuff with our, I guess, our churches and our, they have this ability to, in Nepal, they have this ability to express gratitude and thanks and worship in a way that I haven't experienced here. And it's corporate. There's 100-strong churches of people who so know who it is that they're worshipping. They are so firm on who it is that they're there for. There's no excess. There's no fluff. And I think, I've come home a little bit ruined for anything that doesn't look quite like the fullness of what I saw and experienced over there.
You think you had a hunger for it before you went?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. you talking is reminding me so much of the time like I spent over there in Lebanon as well. Like you can't replicate it. Like it's just like when you come back into a world over here that it's all about consumerism, it's all often about entertaining. And as a pastor, for me, it was often around people pleasing as well as to how do I keep this community of people happy. And that those moments in Lebanon, it was like a ground zero for me just to go, right, now that you've actually felt love in a way that is designed to be like, it's again, like you say, there's people have nothing, like nothing. And the love here is so overwhelming. There's a different currency that occurs in a space like that I've found. And coming back, it's like you come back with an experience that others have not had as well. And all I wanted to do, Aimee, was take people over there and just say, let's just do church that way. Go every weekend. We'll go and hang out in Lebanon. Is that how you're feeling about Nepal?
Yeah, a little bit. I got home wanting to pack my kids up and go back. It's not realistic, but yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Just the depth of connectedness they had. And I think probably culturally as well. Nepal's a very community orientated culture, they're very family. They don't do that quite so well over here in the West. I don't want to sound like I'm bagging out Western churches. I'm not. It's contextual, but yeah, it was super impacting and very thankful for the opportunity to go.
Yeah. And your daughter was impacted by this whole trip as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think at 18, when you haven't experienced much of the world outside of your sphere, to be dumped into something like that, yeah, it did good things for her and just gave her a vision and a perspective that I don't think she would have had we not gone. So,
yeah. I know when I came back, one of the things I wanted to do was take our youngest son, back to Lebanon as well. But then COVID happened and all kinds of things happened. And then I left the whole church world to do the thing that I'm doing now. But this is the thing, though, to allow people to have experiences of love that are outside of our paradigm gives us a fresh lens or a fresh set of eyes on life in a way that we've not seen it before. And that's why I'm so intrigued with how this has affected your identity. Like when I met you, like I said earlier, authenticity was a huge part of your world and your life. Like when you fronted up into the courses that I ran in prophetic mentoring and the like, what we see is what we get. Truth is a very important part of your life. You're willing to use your voice and share. And I saw inside of you the heart of somebody who is, like you say, very authentic. Where vulnerability, now before we went live, you said that vulnerability is like your superpower. You want to explain that to us?
I think it is a superpower. Okay. I don't know what's mine. Yeah, I think identity is the testimony of my life. It's still unfolding as such. I'm adopted, so there's a lot of labels you can put on. And for such a long time, I wore all of them. Adoptee, my parents, I come from a broken home, I guess, for want of a better word. So there's that one as well. Only child, there's another one. There were so many labels I tried to fit in, not quite knowing who I was. I'm a preacher's kid as well. So there's another one. That's always fun. Yeah, but it was the battlefield of my life. And then in my marriage, there was a space where I really lost any shreds of identity I had in that space. And the outworking of that has only been sort of in the last 5 years, where I think for the first time, even though growing up in the church, you can know all the stuff. You can know what God says about you and you can know scripture and everything's here. But I think until you walk a journey where stuff is able to drop from head to heart, until you can actually own that, it doesn't really shift things for you. It's just knowledge. It's not the way you walk. So after walking some rough seasons, and feeling like the Lord was okay for me to be stripped of everything, so all the labels I'd put on myself and all the things that I had identified with and as who I was when everything fell away and you're left with raw material, you kind of left going, all right, Lord, there's nothing else to hang on to. Who do you say I am? Who do you say I am? And it's been in that process of applying actually who he says I am to me when there was nothing left.
Wow.
That I think I've found identity, and in that there's vulnerability in that, because it's truth and it's his truth and it's unshakable. It's rock solid. The world can shake and that's not going to change. It took me a really long time to get there.
Yep.
So I'm a bit of a words girl. So I either write or I talk it out, which is probably where you get the vulnerability from in those groups. It's going to come out. But yeah, there is a strength in being vulnerable and in owning your story. And I think I've so appreciated walking with other women who, in times where I've been having a really hard time, have been vulnerable with their story and their journey and their failings and their growth spaces, that you can go, hang on, if that worked for her, then I can apply that to me and just see what God does. Stories are powerful. They're a powerful means of transformation and of growth. Yeah, I don't know if I answered your question.
You did. And you know, with me, the whole concept of storytelling is probably another whole podcast on its own. So I am just parking that for the moment. We may come back to it. So who is Aimee?
Who is Aimee? I'm a king's kid, and I endeavour to live my life with open hands, surrendered. So when he says come, I go. I don't have much more than that.
Yeah.
My heart's desire is to raise healthy children who can weather the storms of life, because they can't.
Yeah.
And just be willing, ready, and able to serve in whatever space I find myself in. That's pretty much it.
Are you courageous?
I would say no. But to find courage, I think you can do things scared. So I'm willing. I don't know about courageous.
One of the joys of getting to know part of your story and understand who you are, and like I said to you before we went live, even the concept of the labels that have been placed upon you, there is something about freedom on your life that is so obvious it's not funny. It's like Aimee exists not only to be free, but to help others into that place of understanding what freedom actually looks like and feels like. And it comes from a place where you have a great authority in that. And so even from a place of an orphan, there's a whole story in that. And then into a preacher's family, and like you, I'm a preacher's kid too. And we could probably do a whole podcast just on the challenges of being a preacher's kid in that too. But there's something inside of that if you've still found God through all of that, then there is a real pioneer spirit that you carry that is drawing others into that place of awareness as well. How do you feel about that?
I think the light shines brightest when it's dark. So if you've walked dark spaces, he's actually easier to see. Freedom is more attainable when you're stripped of the things that you hold on to that actually keep us bound. We're so good at chaining ourselves, and we're so good at putting shackles on ourselves under the guise of success or under the guise of keeping up appearances, being comfortable. When all that's taken and you don't have capacity to rein that in, and there's only God, I feel like there wasn't a lot of options. I know we always have choice, but it was, if your choice is stay bound or succumb or step into what he has for you, even if you can't see it, that's where the light was. So that's where I'm going.
When did that happen?
Gradual process over many years. Yeah, we walked seasons of sickness. I had a daughter who was very, very sick when she was little. So there's been a series. I think at some point in my life I sort of said, Lord, I'll do anything, but these are my worst fears. Not them. I can't do them. Not strong enough for them. Then I kind of walked them. But he was faithful. He was faithful to show up, and sometimes you get the miraculous healing and it happens in that instant, and God does that, and I've seen that. And sometimes healing is a walkout, and you have to stay in that space of faith and prayer, and hope. My daughter got her healing. It was long after I'd given up praying for it. I kind of settled that this was as good as it would get, and she got a healing.
Wow.
So it's been a gradual space of the Lord meeting me in the darkest places and going, but this is how good I am. You can trust me in this. Yeah.
Would you say you're resilient?
By default.
Resilience, like courage, requires your yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my yes. And I know God to be someone who fills the gaps. So there are many gaps, and He is really good at filling in all of them. So that's enough.
Yeah. I really love that, Aimee. There's so much credit you give to God in all the areas of your life and your journey. And I love that you do. I always feel like with you, I've just got to go, yep, but your yes was extremely costly. And now you sit in a space where there's such a wisdom that you carry and a sense of empathy that you carry as well. I'm guessing Nepal sort of turned that up to 11 when you were there.
A little bit.
So how have you gone trying to reassimilate back into Western society and culture, family, mother, like homeschooler?
I've come back hungry. I've come back hungry to know more, to learn more, to it's kind of been a renewed passion for the spaces. I was staffed with the organisation that I travelled with, and actually finished last October, but still have been able to travel with them in voluntary capacity. I think you get to spaces in life where we get tired, we get fatigued, and even amazing things like this become heavy. Homeschooling becomes taxing after a while. But His grace to sustain stuff, but to be able to go and then come back, it was such a reset in dreams, in passion, in things that it was a little bit like my heart going home, particularly in the church spaces and the ministry spaces, to have that refire and then come back. So settling in, my landscape's changed different over here since coming home. I've transitioned jobs and things like that. So I am in a season of pause at the moment and kind of wondering, all right, God, what's next? But yeah, I'm super hungry. So I'm reading and learning and devouring as much as I can around those things that have really caught fire again in my heart, and just see what God does with it. Yeah.
I love that, Amy. So Every Daughter Matters EDM. If people want to get more information or get involved with that, where do they go to and what do they do?
Yeah, so check out the website. It is everydaughtermatters.org.au. Or you can find them on Facebook as well. It's probably the easiest way, Facebook, Instagram. I think they're on TikTok now as well. It's a little grassroots organisation from Port Macquarie area. Amazing. So in 4 years, they've gone from one booth to, I think they're on 13 now. There's 50 Nepali staff, and 2,000 rescues, 2,000 lives changed. Yeah, I encourage you to check it out.
Yeah, I encourage everyone to check it out as well. Like, one of the beauties of being able to talk with somebody who you call a friend, you get to see the heart of what's actually happening here on the ground in Australia, but you're also hearing the experience of what are happening there. And I've always found it way better to support something that I have a relationship with and been able to see the effect and to see and hear the stories that are happening in that. So I'll put the link on the bottom of this podcast so people can click on it and jump on and have a look at what you're doing as well.
Thank you.
Well, Aimee, thank you so much for hanging out with us on the Greater Things podcast. It's been such a joy. I am going to be eagerly watching what happens next for you and your family. So you're the kind of person who discovers something new to love, and you've got such a heart for the kingdom of God too. So I just think whatever's next and whatever God has got in store for you, there is going to be people will gather around who you are, what you're doing. And I can't wait to see what God does through you.
Thanks, Matt. It's been good to chat.
Well, this is the Greater Things podcast. Thanks for listening along to us. If you'd like to support the things that we're doing, there's a little link there called Buy Me a Coffee. You can jump on there, and everything you do goes back into doing what we're doing here. And also with Greater Things, if you're already supporting us, we just want to say thanks and really appreciate and love the support that you guys are giving. But otherwise, we'll be back in your ears next time. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, or go to our website, greaterthingsinternational.com.